Yuji is an ugly, pathetic loser, but life ain't just kicking him, it's power bombing his ass. He ends up at some academy with 5 busty waifus rockin' mommy milkers that could put the Kardashians to shame. But don't let the curves distract you. These girls got pasts darker than that black hole from Interstellar. Yuji ain't here to play therapist, just trying to live normal for once, but tough luck, because he's smack in the middle of their mess. Either he saves them, or he sinks right along with them. But before we jump into all that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell for more updates in the future. Yuji Kazami, a young man, is taken to a police station for questioning. There, he tells the officer that he is just a student, so he is soon released. After leaving, he meets a young woman with glasses who drives him to school. While driving, she gets scared when she thinks Yuji has a gun in his bag, causing her to let go of the wheel. They almost crash into a truck, but Yuji quickly grabs the wheel and saves them. When they arrive at Miama Academy, it looks like a normal school. Inside, the woman introduces herself as Chizuru Tachibana, the school's principal. Yuji asks why the school seems empty, and she explains that, including him, only 6 students are enrolled. He also questions how it can be an ordinary school when there's a security camera outside, but Chizuru insists it is normal. She then shows Yuji his new home, the student dormitory. Suddenly, a girl in a maid outfit appears behind him and asks if he is a transfer student or a prowler. After greeting her, she introduces herself as Sachi Komine, a first-year student. When Yuji asks why she's dressed as a maid, she explains that as the class representative, she helps teachers and does various tasks, so she wears the uniform. She then takes him to the caretaker's room, where he will live as the dormitory leader. That night, while taking a bath, Yuji thinks about his ordinary life. The next morning, he wakes up nude, puts eye drops in his eyes, drinks oolong tea, and goes jogging, remembering his master's lessons on running fast, hitting hard, and reading books. A cat watches him pass by. After jogging, he showers, eats cereal with milk, puts on his school uniform, and heads to school. On the way, he meets a red-haired girl holding a hairbrush who trips. Another girl ends up caught in her grip and has her hair brushed. Yuji greets the red-haired girl, who introduces herself as Ammane Suo. She encourages the shy girl to introduce herself, and she manages to say her name, Makina Irisu. Ammane makes Makina shake hands with Yuji in exchange for snacks. When Makina asks about his favorite animal, Yuji says he likes dogs, and Ammane teases him for it. Inside the school, Yuji, who is early, sees another girl acting in a classroom. When he enters, she gets nervous and asks who he is. After he introduces himself, she blushes and denies acting. She then introduces herself as Michiru Matsushima and asks if he has a sense of humor, but he says he doesn't care for it. She tells him to call her by her name, but then gets embarrassed. Michiru takes some raw mune candy from her pink bag and eats it. When Yuji asks if she is a tsundere, she screams, backs away, and knocks over tables. When he asks if she bleaches her hair, she claims it is natural, but Yuji doubts it since it isn't blonde enough. He touches her hair, making her blush and push him. Michiru then stands on a table saying all tsundere girls must have blonde pigtails. As the wind blows, Michiru's skirt lifts, showing her panties, but Yuji doesn't notice. When he greets her and tries to shake hands, she refuses, which he understands, though she expects him to be confused. Yuji then comments that tsundere girls have it tough, which offends her, and she tells him to leave. Soon after, Sachi, Ammane, and Makina enter the classroom, with Michiru sitting in the second front seat and Yuji in the back. When Sachi calls Michiru-sama, Michiru quickly hushes her, saying it is a joke, which makes Sachi sad. Realizing her mistake, Michiru tells Sachi to call her whatever she wants, making Ammane giggle. Yuji asks Michiru if she's okay, which annoys her, and she angrily says she will kill him. Just then, Chizuru arrives, marking the start of class, with all students present except one, Yumiko Sakaki, a name Yuji has heard before. After class, Sachi gives Yuji a tour of the school's main facilities. Yuji notes that he has yet to meet one student, Sakaki, but when he mentions this, Sachi suddenly leaves without explanation. Later, Yuji enters a classroom where a girl is reading a book. He asks if she is Yumiko Sakaki, the absent student. He introduces himself, but as she tries to leave, he stops her, prompting her to pull out a knife, which he blocks just in time. When he asks again if she is Yumiko, she finally confirms it. That night, Yuji returns to the dormitory and notices that everyone except Yumiko is back. He wonders what the girls are doing in their rooms. As he enters his own room, he senses an intruder. He barges in and sees Ammane changing, her bra slipping off and exposing her chest. He jokes that she must have hired a stripper for his birthday, which makes her laugh as she apologizes. She explains that changing in his room is easier than going up to her second floor room. Yuji expects her to tell him to leave, but she doesn't mind being seen, as she isn't embarrassed about her body. While changing, she asks if he has a sister. He reveals that he once had one, but she died years ago. Her name was Kazuki. Ammane looks shocked, but says she is just curious. After dressing, she notices his mess kit and canned food, and she declares herself his new sister who will cook for him. As she leaves, Yuji wonders how she got in, since he locked the door. Outside, Ammane holds a lockpick and recalls a tragic bus accident where her classmates died, saying she has found him, Yuji. Meanwhile, Michiru Mairu sits on the grass with a sleeping cat, Makina lies down eating an apple, and Sachi, wearing a gas mask, is making explosives. On the school roof, Yumiko holds her knife, vowing never to accept Yuji. Later, Yuji receives a call from JB about a job. He opens a lock case using the code 9029, revealing weapons inside. He then realizes his ordinary school life has truly begun. Yumiko lunges at Yuji from behind with her knife, but he effortlessly dodges. Frustrated, she asks how he managed to evade her attack, only for him to playfully tease her about her slow timing. When he questions her about trying to hurt a classmate, she claims innocence since she doesn't actually cut him. Putting her knife away, she walks off, warning him to remember this. Later in class, Ammane asks if Yuji has a rough time and tells him he's trying to get close to Yumiko too fast. As she talks, Yuji feels her bare foot rubbing against his, making him uncomfortable. Sachi checks under the desk, but Ammane's feet are already back in her shoes. That afternoon, in the heat, Yuji reads a book and notices Makina sleeping under a tree. Checking her pulse, he sees she is fine and has taken a bite from an apple. When she wakes up, she eats the apple, walks to a pond, and feeds the fish. She tries to get a crawfish to grab a stick, but loses her balance and almost falls in when Yuji startles her. He catches her and sets her down safely. Shy but grateful, she starts to leave when Yuji asks why she is avoiding him. She doesn't answer but admits she knows his name, though calling him by it is embarrassing. Instead, she calls him Oni-chan. He then catches a crawfish, which Makina calls a clawfish. He explains how crawfish change colors and tells her to release it so she can catch it again. Later, Makina thanks him for playing with her and teaching her how to catch a crawfish. She plans to keep it and see if it turns blue, and Yuji tells her to feed it food without carotene. Before running off, she gives him an apple as thanks. Yumiko watches him from the rooftop. In a flashback, she angrily questions Chizuru about letting Yuji enroll in what she considers a girls' school. Chizuru reassures her nothing bad will happen. Yumiko later researches Yuji online and still can't accept him. The next day, she tries to attack him again, but he dodges every time. Eventually, she loses balance and falls, exposing her panties before quickly covering them. Michiru almost laughs, but stops when Yumiko glares at her. Afterward, Chizuru tells Yuji that Yumiko fears intruders in her territory and has been at the academy since its founding. She wants him to handle it himself. Outside, Yuji wonders if he will ever get used to school life. Just then, Makina appears and follows him to a vending machine, where he buys tea for himself and apple juice for her. Makina asks Yuji to tell her a cool story for the hot day. After the story, Ammane notices Yuji and Makina getting along, and asks if he can do the same with Yumiko, though it won't be easy. Suddenly, they see a blonde woman waving at the school gate. Ammane asks if Yuji knows her, but he says he doesn't. As he walks inside, the woman says his name and blows him a kiss. Yuji tells Ammane to take Makina inside while he goes to meet her. She asks if he is enjoying student life, and he answers coldly. She warns him to make sure nothing bad happens, or he will face an accidental death. Before leaving, she recalls how he once walked 200 kilometers across the border instead of taking a train, which led to him ending up at a police station. Yuji teases her for reading his mind and then apologizes. She leaves in her Ferrari, and Yuji reveals that her name is Julia Bardera, also known as JB. Back in class, Ammane suspiciously asks about the woman, and Sachi, Makina, and Michiru are also curious. Yuji explains she is his guarantor and his boss at his part-time job, where he cleans up garbage while she gives orders. When the bell rings, Ammane sits in front of him and asks if the woman is his girlfriend, which he calls a stupid question. She then asks about his past, and he explains that he is a freeloader taken care of by an older woman, a friend of JB's. After she dies, JB takes care of him and makes him work hard. Ammane asks again if he has a girlfriend, and he says no. Later, Michiru eavesdrops but denies listening, so Yuji teases her for acting like a tsundere. That evening, as Yuji returns to the dorm, Yumiko suddenly tries to stab him again, but he catches her arm, making her drop the knife in fear. He returns it, telling her he isn't her enemy. When he calls her by name, she asks him to stop, but he refuses. He suggests they start as friends, but when he asks for a fun nickname, she pulls her knife again. Instead, they agree to call each other by their surnames. Later, Yumiko recalls an old woman giving her apples and sees the other girls as her friends. Toward the end, we see how each girl joins the academy before Yuji transfers, leading to their friendship. As Yuji jogs back to the dormitory, he spots Ammane picking the lock to his room. He quickly hides behind the wall, watching as she slips inside and tries to get into his bed, only to discover it's empty. She has planned to give him a wake-up kiss. She then picks up his shirt, smells it, and jumps onto his bed, sniffing his pillow before pleasuring herself. Just then, Yuji walks in to drink an oolong tea and catches her in the act, embarrassing her. Later, as Yuji, Ammane, and Makina are running late for class, Makina blames Ammane for staying too long in the bathroom. She complains about running, so Yuji teaches her a song to make it fun. They sing about what Ammane did earlier, making her uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Sachi makes a grocery list with drinks for everyone, including the most delicious milk from Makina. As she goes shopping, Ammane and Michiru notice Makina mimicking Yuji and speaking arrogantly. Yumiko reminds them of their afternoon class, and Ammane tells Yuji before leaving. Yumiko then mentions that Ammane has a mental illness due to a traffic accident. Later, Ammane and Makina return, realizing Sachi is still out. Ammane calls her, while Yumiko tells Yuji that no one in the academy is normal, including him. Later, Yuji hears strange noises and thinks someone is having sex, but it turns out to be Michiru struggling with a cat stealing her pouch. She asks for help, and Yuji suggests using the smell of citrus to repel the cat. Since her hair smells like grape juice, he tells her to wave her pigtails, calling them Alpha and Bravo, and her cowlick Charlie. The plan fails, and the cat jumps on her head before running away. She names it Meow Kitty and thanks Yuji in a low voice before leaving. Later, Sachi suddenly takes approval for something Yuji has agreed to on autopilot. He can't remember until she starts measuring him for a shark pouch. Earlier, Michiru has ruined her pouch's zipper, and Sachi, finding it cute, asks Yuji if he wants one too. Absent-mindedly, he agrees. Now, Sachi plans to make his pink and sparkly, shocking him as he finally remembers what he has just agreed to. A few minutes ago, Yuji sees Michiru trip and fall, teasing her by calling her a mophead when he notices the zipper on her shark pouch is ruined. As she's about to ask Sachi to fix it, Sachi suddenly appears, scaring her. Sachi finds Michiru's pink shark pouch cute, and Yuji agrees. Michiru teases him, asking if he wants one too, and for some reason, he absent-mindedly answers yes on autopilot. She questions if he is really answering without thinking, but Sachi dismisses her and excitedly says she will make his pouch extra cute and sparkly with rhinestones so he can wear it every day. Yuji then imagines himself wearing a pink shark pouch and quickly realizes he doesn't want that. He calls for Sachi and tells her to stop working on it, though she is already halfway done. Instead, he asks her to make a bush dog pouch, which she promises to finish in 20 minutes. As she works, he regrets not choosing a golden lion tamarin instead. Losing his composure, he bangs the wall a few times, shouting, "Sleep is vital!" Just then, Makina appears and hears the commotion, so Michiru explains what is happening. Sachi soon returns with the finished sparkly bush dog pouch, asking Yuji to put it on. As he reaches for it, Michiru, whose eyes have mysteriously turned green, snatches it and shows it to Makina. At first, Makina doesn't like it, but when she sees it sparkle, she changes her mind. Yuji decides to let her have it, and Sachi hands it over. Makina is happy with her new pouch, but when she accidentally presses the side of its nose, it makes a barking sound. Sachi has added different bush dog sounds, which Makina finds adorable. As she and Michiru leave, Yuji thanks Michiru for saving him, but she has no idea how she did, especially since her eyes have turned back to blue. Later, while the girls are playing baseball, Ammane falls and sprains her ankle, so Yuji carries her to the nurse's office. Since there is no nurse, he treats her injury himself. Ammane then asks why he always acts so cold toward her. As he's about to leave, she grabs him, not wanting to be left alone. She suddenly confesses her love, saying she has fallen for him ever since they first met, and asks him to be her boyfriend. When he doesn't respond the way she hopes, she switches her request, asking to be his big sister instead, but he refuses. However, after seeing her lose confidence, he reluctantly agrees to play along. Happy, she pats his head for accepting. Later, during lunchtime, as Yuji eats his usual meal, Ammane and Makina bring a big lunchbox to share. Ammane then feeds him the food she has made for him, and Yuji reflects on how he has tried to live on his own after his master's death. He wonders if his ordinary life is truly worth it, and if he should accept this happiness. Then, it is Makina's turn to feed him. Later, Yuji ends up revealing his master's name, Asako. While jogging, Yuji sees Michiru standing on a cliff, watching the ocean. She explains why she's looking at the waves, but then the academy's cat appears. Yuji teases her, saying she is really there for the cat, but she denies it while petting its head. He tries to remember its name, calling it Ramel, but Michiru angrily corrects him. It's Meow Kitty. Later, Yuji sits on the grass with Michiru and Meow Kitty. She says the ocean is pretty, but the sky at night is scary, especially when it's cloudy. Looking at the moon, she notes it isn't full, and shares that she sometimes feels trapped and lonely. Yuji jokes that if she were a wolf, she'd have to avoid the night sky, but she says she wouldn't mind being a wolf, or even Dracula, because then she could be shot with a silver bullet. As she feeds Meow Kitty, she asks what happens when people die. In a flashback, Yuji tells her death is like falling into an endless sleep, and she asks him to bury her there if she dies. Later, at the dorm, she drinks sour lemon juice, saying vitamin C makes her smarter. Yuji doubts her, so she quickly walks away. That night, during a storm, Makina says Michiru is an alien. Sachi claims the real Michiru is gone, and the current one is different. Just then, the lights go out, a girl screams, and Yuji rushes upstairs to find Yumiko scared. The scream comes again, and Yuji recognizes it as Michiru. She soon appears, walking strangely with clear wrappers in her hair, making Yumiko even more nervous. As Michiru moves forward, Yumiko whispers, asking if she is really a demon. They hide behind another wall as Michiru yells and walks downstairs. As Yumiko goes to bed, Yuji teasingly calls her Yumin, which she dislikes. When the lights come back, Michiru stands there, crying. Sachi grabs a mop after seeing the mess, and Yuji asks what Michiru has been doing. Sachi says Michiru is doing interpretive dance while secreting a liquid. Yuji touches it, smells it, then goes to bed while Sachi cleans up. Inside Michiru's room, there's a bleach box and bottle, revealing she has been bleaching her hair. The next day in the afternoon, Yuji returns to the dormitory when Makina tells him she, Ammane, and Sachi have been discussing friendship. As Yumiko is about to leave, Makina asks if she thinks men and women can be friends, but Yumiko doesn't answer and just walks away. When Michiru returns, Ammane asks if men and women can be friends, but Michiru isn't sure. She hands her bag to Sachi and leaves. Later, Yuji goes to look for her and finds her at the garden fountain, looking like she's in pain. He tries to take her back to the dorm, but she refuses and walks away. When he searches for her again, he finds her at the same cliff as before. Michiru says she doesn't like the wind, but she does, which confuses Yuji. Then, her eyes turn green, and she seems better, resting with Meow Kitty. Yuji asks who she is, saying she isn't the Michiru he knows. She then asks what he would do if he woke up after thinking he'd never wake up again. She also questions why people are desperate to live, and Yuji replies that life comes at a cost. As he is about to leave, Meow Kitty runs off, and green-eyed Michiru asks if he has a lover and what a lover is like. She also asks if he has ever kissed a girl, and when he says yes, she kisses him to understand what it feels like. After the kiss, she still doesn't get it and says, "See you later." Her eyes turn blue again, and she backs away, falling onto the grass. When she stands up, she accidentally touches dog poop and tells the owner to clean it up. As she wipes her hand, Yuji says she is the Michiru he knows. She asks if she has said anything strange, but he replies that she always says strange things, which she finds rude as they return to the dorm. The next day, Michiru tells Yumiko to exercise instead of reading, claiming to be a super athlete. Yumiko doubts her, so Michiru dares her to attack, promising to dodge elegantly. Yumiko pulls out a box cutter and Michiru quickly moves, claiming she dodged perfectly, which annoys Yumiko. Meanwhile, Yuji thinks about the Michiru who kissed him, believing she isn't the same Michiru. After Yumiko flicks Michiru's forehead and leaves, Michiru asks Yuji what is wrong. When he mentions she has osculated him, she doesn't understand, but when he leans closer to demonstrate, she runs away. Later, as Michiru eats pills outside, Meow Kitty jumps onto her head, but she scares him off while trying to apologize. That evening, she searches for Meow Meow, the name she officially gives the cat, carrying biscuits to make up for being cold to him. When she sees Yuji, she gets embarrassed. On the cliff by the lighthouse, she explains that she combines the weird name because of him. As the sun sets, Yuji suggests heading back, but Michiru refuses, feeling guilty for how she treated Meow Meow. Yuji realizes Meow Meow is her best friend. Before leaving, Yuji tells her to go ahead while he catches up. Suddenly, he sees a blood trail leading to a dying Meow Meow. Michiru arrives and cries in agony. Yuji stops a taxi, and as the end credits roll, they rush Meow Meow to a vet. Michiru tries feeding him biscuits, but Yuji tells her to hold him close as he is dying. She doesn't believe it, but Meow Meow coughs blood into her hand and takes his last breath. Michiru cries in devastation as Meow Meow dies in her arms. Hey guys, I know I'm interrupting the video, but I'm just here to remind you that most of you guys watching this video are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell for more updates in the future. Now let's get straight back into the video. Yuji enters Michiru's room and discovers her unconscious on the floor beside her pills. Picking one up, he puts it in his mouth but immediately spits it out. Realizing she has drugged herself, he takes her to the nurse's office where Chizuru assures him that some etazolum won't kill her. While resting, Michiru sadly thinks about Miama after his death. The next day, as Yuji leaves his room, Michiru tells him she is fine. Sachi appears and Michiru sees she is in full maid mode again. Sachi then asks if Michiru is in full tsundere mode, and Michiru admits it. She says she's all better from the cold she had last night. Then, Makina and Ammane arrive, with Makina wanting Yuji to play shadow tag with her. Ammane notices Makina has been talking about it a lot, but all she does is shadow boxing. Makina then starts playing by trying to tag her own shadow. Michiru asks Sachi if she is done cleaning, and Sachi confirms she is. Later, on the academy rooftop, Yuji asks if she is the other Michiru, and where the real Michiru is. The other Michiru says the the real Michiru will never return because she has fallen into deep darkness. She doesn't want Yuji to torment Michiru anymore and leaves, calling him Yuji-kun, which surprises him. Back in the dorm, Sachi goes to Yuji's room and shows him a locked box Michiru has given her, saying Michiru doesn't want it back. Sachi considers breaking it open with her chainsaw but decides against it, asking Yuji to open it instead. After Sachi leaves, Yuji accidentally opens the box and is shocked by what he sees. He then goes to Michiru's room and shows the other Michiru an exchange journal between her and the real Michiru. He doesn't believe a personality can transfer through a heart transplant, but he needs to see it for himself. Other Michiru says real Michiru will never return, though she wants her to because it is her body. A flashback shows real Michiru asking her other self to take over because she can't handle life anymore. After the flashback, Yuji asks what she thinks about real Michiru disappearing forever. Other Michiru says the real Michiru should live in her body. He asks if she wants a new life, but she refuses, as it isn't her body. Yuji then gives her a pill, saying it will bring the real Michiru back. Other Michiru refuses, so he forces her to take it. Michiru's eyes turn blue, meaning the real Michiru has returned. Michiru then decides she wants to die so she won't lose anyone again. Yuji accepts her final wish, meaning he will kill her. Later, Michiru wakes up in a casket, unable to move, as Yuji tells her he has given her a temporary muscle relaxant. He then begins burying her alive, saying it is what she wanted. A flashback shows a young Michiru with black hair playing the piano while her strict instructor hits her hand for making mistakes, making her feel like a failure. Another flashback shows her in a classroom, realizing she wants to end it. On the rooftop, she sees a girl about to jump off the building. Jealous, Michiru starts crying, and the girl notices her. After introducing themselves, they become friends. After school, they spend time together, eating treats, buying a pink shark pouch, and taking a picture. But their friendship ends when the girl jumps, saying goodbye. Michiru has a heart attack and is taken to the hospital, where doctors replace her weak heart. After surgery, she hears the girl's voice offering to help, but she refuses and seems to harm herself with a box cutter. Back in the present, Michiru wakes up in the casket, scared, and wets herself. She tries calling Yuji and escaping, but can't. She then sees the ghost of Miama and the other girl, who asks if she truly wants the world to end. Another flashback shows Michiru struggling to walk in the hospital, then making jokes to make others laugh. In another dimension, she meets the girl again, now with her face covered. The girl confesses her love as a friend and asks Michiru to join her in the afterlife. As Michiru steps back, the girl tries to pull her in with a dark energy, but Michiru finally accepts that she is dead. The girl vanishes, leaving her shoes and a photo. Michiru decides to move forward, and after seeing Miama one last time, returns to the real world. She finally escapes the casket but collapses. Yuji pulls her out, saying he has waited 3 days without food. As they leave, she hugs him, grateful to be alive. While Yuji carries her, she asks what he would do if she had really died, and he reveals the pill was just candy. Later, they visit the girl's old house in America, where the other Michiru reunites with her past. She hugs Yuji in tears, thanking them. Though she is supposed to be gone, she still appears sometimes. Back at the dorm, Michiru prays at Miamel's grave and smiles at Yuji. In a flashback, some girls gossip about Yumiko, whispering that she's the daughter of a mistress, raised apart from her father, and only called home after her brother's death. One girl, Ida, tries to befriend Yumiko, but when Yumiko sees her hand as demonic, she harms her own hand with a box cutter, scaring the others. Yumiko learns to survive without a real home. In an office, JB informs Mikiaki, the head of the Sakaki family, that Yumiko's mental condition is stable. Mikiaki wants Yumiko to take her place in the Tohin Railway Group and expects Yuji to convince her, even allowing his men to attack her if necessary. JB suggests a different plan. Meanwhile, at the dorm, Yuji and the girls play a board game where Michiru loses to Sachi. Yumiko leaves and Yuji follows her. Elsewhere, Yumiko notices Yuji and gets annoyed when he calls her Yumi. He recalls JB's instructions to protect Yumiko while pretending to lose to her father's men. Yumiko is drawing and Yuji calls it good, but she feels it isn't enough. She prefers drawing alone, and when Yuji jokes it makes her unattractive, she gets irritated. It starts raining and a lightning strike scares her, making her drop her things, including her box cutter, which Yuji returns. Suddenly, 3 men surround them, demanding Yuji step aside. Instead of losing, Yuji quickly defeats them all. He then grabs Yumiko and hides under a bridge. Curious about his strength, Yumiko asks him how he becomes so strong. When lightning strikes again, she hugs him in fear, realizing she isn't as strong as him. She then tells her story. Her father expects a son, but she is born instead. Her mother becomes weak and sick, and her grandparents take her to the hospital, leaving Yumiko alone. They treat her as a burden. When she visits visits her mother later, she overhears her saying Yumiko should have been born a boy, which breaks her heart. She runs away, cuts her hair, and later learns her father's mistress gives birth to a son. Before her mother dies, she apologizes for not having a boy. Yumiko's brother also dies of illness. Her father then takes her back to make her the family heir, but Yumiko believes they are all just tools for the Tohin group. After her mother and brother's deaths, she cuts Ida. One of the men searches for them as Yumiko reveals that Miama Academy is built by her father to hide her from society. She apologizes for saying too much, but Yuji understands her need for solitude. As they return home, Michiaki is furious and demands Chizuru to expel Yuji. When she refuses, he threatens to send Yumiko abroad and shut the academy down. Yumiko becomes outraged upon learning this. After hearing that Yuji will be expelled if she refuses, she storms out of Chizuru's office. The girls see her leaving, and Chizuru chases after her but falls. Later, Chizuru knocks on Yumiko's door, asking her what is wrong. Yumiko calls Yuji to talk in her room while the girls wait for her to come out. She then sees cars arriving, and Michiaki steps out, ordering her to come outside. Yuji appears, and Michiaki tells him to step aside and bring Yumiko to him. Chizuru asks him to wait, but Michiaki refuses, irritating Michiru, who stands up to him, saying Yumiko is at her limit. This angers Michiaki, realizing he has made a mistake leaving Yumiko with the girls. Yumiko finally steps out, and the girls realize Michiaki is her father. When his men move to grab her, Yumiko fires a shot at the ground with a Walther PPK, a police handgun she buys online. The loud gunshot hurts Michiru's ears, and Yumiko demands to talk things over. As the sun sets, Michiaki's men raise shields while Michiaki, JB, and Chizuru hide behind a car. JB informs them that the students have taken shelter in a school. Yumiko fires again, and Michiaki tells her to stop, saying he will be alone if he loses both her and Misako, her mother. Yumiko blames him for making her feel alone and declares she wants the Sakaki family gone. She shoots the car window, accusing him of lying and being cursed by the Sakaki family. Tired of her defiance, Michiaki moves toward her. Yumiko shoots him multiple times until one bullet hits his shoulder, but he still refuses to back down. Just as she is about to shoot again, she runs out of bullets. JB orders her men to seize Yumiko, but they stop when she pulls out a grenade. Realizing they can never understand each other, Yumiko pulls the pin, falls to the floor, and the grenade explodes. Michiaki rushes inside and sees Yumiko's burned body, making him cry. Chizuru enters, sees the body, and faints. JB orders Michiaki to be taken to the hospital. The next day, Yuji visits him at the Sakaki family's grave, where Michiaki hands him a note from Yumiko's room, asking to keep Miama Academy open even after her death. Michiaki, now regretful, leaves, unaware that behind a tree, Yumiko stands alive. She has survived and, despite hating her family, feels happy to be born. Crying tears of joy, she thanks her father and says goodbye. On the rooftop, JB realizes Yuji has helped Yumiko fake her death, using a sniper rifle to wound Michiaki while others carry a fake body. In the classroom, the girls are relieved, while Chizuru, believing Yumiko has died, faints again upon seeing her. JB scolds Yuji for disobeying orders, but understands his choice. She then gives Yumiko her family registry, allowing her to start a new life. Later, Yumiko asks Yuji who he really is, but he simply says he is a student. Though she doubts it, she has changed, and when Yuji calls her attractive, she smiles happily. Well, if I continue with the story, my gym membership might be canceled. Emma, take the charge from here.
As Sachi sweeps outside the dorm, Michiru rushes out, urging her to hurry or they'll be late. Sachi calmly reminds her that it's Sunday and the campus is closed. Realizing her mistake, Michiru quietly heads back inside to sleep. Sachi notices that Michiru and Yumiko have been acting differently, knowing Yuji has changed their lives. Inside the dorm, Yuji and Ammane are reading, and Sachi watches them. Realizing that Ammane and Makina have also changed because of Yuji, she wonders if she can change too. Just then, Makina takes Sachi's hand and suggests they watch TV. They see a news report about kids struggling to count 100 in the bath. Makina then challenges Sachi to count to 10,000, and Sachi agrees. That night, while bathing, Sachi tries to reach 10,000 but passes out. Ammane finds her and takes her to bed while Yuji and Makina stay with her. Feeling guilty, Makina cries for making Sachi push herself too hard. Later, when Ammane and Makina leave to get ice, Yuji hears Sachi say Yukun, which surprises him as he recalls when she first called him that. The next day, Sachi recovers, and Makina hugs her while Michiru, Ammane, and Yumiko are relieved. Yumiko wonders where Yuji has gone. Meanwhile, Yuji arrives at another place by train. In the classroom, Chizuru is surprised he takes a day off, reminding the girls that tests are coming up, to Michiru's dislike. Elsewhere, Yuji sees a house still standing and visits a children's park, where a boy climbs toward a girl. This reminds him of his childhood with Sachi. Back in class, Chizuru tells the girls to study. Michiru, annoyed by the tests, jokingly tells Sachi to get rid of them. Ammane scolds her for making Sachi consider something impossible. impossible, but Sachi suddenly agrees, leaving them speechless. That night, Yuji returns, and Ammane tells him about Sachi's plan. He decides to talk to her, and Yumiko insists as well. Before going to her room, Yumiko asks if he has heard about a girl burning down her school to avoid tests, but he hasn't. She drops the topic, but asks if he would ever let Sachi do something dangerous. Yuji assures her no harm will come to Sachi, just as he has saved Yumiko, calling her by her real name, which makes her blush. In Sachi's room, she mutters about being a good girl, with a gas mask on the floor. The next day, Ammane and Yumiko sense something is off. That night, Sachi sneaks into the school, drawing plans to destroy the tests. The next day, she is exhausted in class, making Yuji suspicious. At night, she prepares chemicals while wearing a gas mask. Another day passes, and Chizuru reminds everyone about the test, but Sachi is absent, making Michiru disappointed. The girls notice Sachi seems drained. That night, Sachi brings tanks, gasoline, and dynamite into the school, setting up time bombs to destroy the entire academy. As Sachi is setting up the time bombs, the other girls enter the classroom, surprising her. They have been expecting Yuji, but find her instead. Panicking, Sachi presses a hidden button to stop the countdown, but the timer keeps running. She desperately tells everyone to leave, but Michiru and the others stay. Asking why, Michiru nearly reveals a dynamite hidden under a desk, making Sachi even more anxious. She tries not to reveal her plan, but when Ammane attempts to take her back to the dorm, Sachi pushes her away. As the girls grow more worried, Michiru accidentally falls off the desk, hitting the chalkboard loudly. The fallen desk reveals a dynamite, and Sachi quickly covers it with her body, ordering the girls to run. The timer hits 0, but nothing explodes. Yuji enters, relieved they are all there as he has expected. The girls return to the dorm, leaving Yuji and Sachi to clean up. Sachi, confused about why the bombs don't detonate, learns from Yuji that he has tampered with them to freeze at 0. Realizing there is a miscalculation, she is so scared she wets herself. After changing, Yuji finally recognizes Sachi as his childhood friend, Sakan. Sachi then shares her past. Her family owns the Komine Ironworks factory, and as a child, she proudly shows her parents a perfect score on her exam. Though they are proud, they are too busy to notice her. One day at the park, she meets Yuji, and they play together, but he stops visiting often. On her 10th birthday, her parents plan to take the day off for her, but she, feeling lonely, runs away. At the park, she regrets her anger and wants to go home. When she hears her parents calling her, she runs toward them, but before they can reunite, they are hit by a truck. Afterward, her mother falls into a coma and her father dies, leading her to believe she has to be a good girl. Yuji reassures her that it is okay to be selfish sometimes. Proud of her, he pats her head and she cries tears of joy, hugging him. Remembering his master's words about repaying debts, Yuji takes the bombs outside and detonates them as fireworks to erase Sachi's evidence. The girls see the explosion and admire the display. The next day, Yuji takes Sachi to her family's factory, where she sees a sign saying, "Happy birthday, Sachi," along with pictures of her. She finds a note from her mother, revealing that her name, Sachi, means happiness. Overwhelmed, she cries and thanks her parents. Later, she visits her comatose mother at the hospital. As they walk home, she asks Yuji to hug her for 1 minute, and he does. Yuji is stunned when he receives an email from Makina informing him that she's promoted him from brother to father. When he shows it to her, Makina cheerfully confirms that she truly wants him to be her father. Later, in the dorm, Yuji explains to the other girls that he has decided to become Makina's father, leaving them confused. He promises Makina that he will protect her and help her grow into a fine woman, and she hugs him. Afterward, he calls JB to share his big news, and she reacts just like the girls. He explains that Makina has offered him 70 billion yen to be her father. Earlier that day, she has given him a check, which is her lifetime allowance, and he has accepted it because he couldn't just leave her alone. After a flashback, JB researches the Irisu family and finds they have a long history in politics and government affairs. She tells Yuji that Makina is the eldest daughter of the family's leader, and that her father, Masataka Irisu, has been an accountant for the Ministry of Defense before dying in a supposed accident. Yuji asks JB to gather all the documents for him, and she agrees before he hangs up. Just then, Makina appears, now officially calling Yuji Papa, and headbutts him before falling on him. She then kisses him on the lips. When Yuji asks what she is doing, she explains that it is just a display of affection between father and daughter. She keeps kissing him until he grabs her chest, making her call him a pervert. Suddenly, Ammane enters, looking jealous as she sees them. Later, in Chizuru's office, Chizuru gives Yuji documents on the Irisu family, explaining that the real leaders are Makina's grandmother and mother. Makina's father has married into the family and stolen secret financial records before trying to contact the government, but he has died in an accident soon after. Makina has been kidnapped that same day, and after suffering mental trauma, she has lost her status as heir and has been replaced by her younger sister. Yuji is surprised, as he has thought Makina is an only child. Later, while the girls are planting, Makina shows Yuji a small apple tree, saying that one day it will grow and she will give him apples. As summer break approaches, Makina is excited, but Yuji, as her father, assigns her morning runs, homework, and practical training. When training starts, Makina tries to punch Yuji, but he dodges easily. She grabs him, but he uses a leg lock to make her give up. Back at the dorm, Ammane asks Yumiko about Yuji and Makina, but Yumiko has no idea. Ammane wonders what they are doing, and Yumiko remembers Yuji ordering something online earlier. On campus, Yuji continues training Makina, teaching her to aim with a sniper rifle. She misses her first shot, but hits the target on her second try. Just then, Yumiko arrives, and Yuji angrily scolds her for walking into a target practice area. He points to a red flag on a tree, explaining that when it is up, the area is off limits. Though Yumiko has no idea, Yuji tells Yumiko that it is target practice, and she realizes he has used her computer to buy a sniper rifle. He asks if she wants to try it, but she refuses, saying she prefers chess. Makina calls Yumiko boring, so Yumiko pulls her cheeks hard. When Makina calls her ugly, Yumiko pulls her cheeks again until Makina finally apologizes. Later, at the train station, Ammane is leaving for a trip, and Makina embarrasses her by shouting "Banzai!" Back at the dorm, Makina asks Yuji if he is going home, but he says he doesn't have a home and plans to visit his master's grave in Yamanashi. Makina decides to go with him. During their trip, Yuji explains that after losing his family, he has been raised by his master, Asako Kusakabe. When they reach the grave, Yuji tells Makina that Asako has taken him to America for work, and after returning, he has trained with her to become strong. He sees her as more than just a master. She is like a mother to him. When they arrive at his old house, Makina is surprised that it has everything, including a TV. Yuji finds eye drops in the fridge and gives one to Makina. She then sees a picture of him as a boy with JB and Asako, and he admits he looks terrible back then. After cleaning up, they visit Asako's grave and pray. Next to it is a grave for John. Makina thanks Asako for raising Yuji. That night, while Makina sleeps, Yuji calls Sachi to tell her they will stay the night. He also tries to call JB, but leaves a message when she doesn't answer. The next day, while buying groceries, Makina hides behind a tree when she sees her younger sister, Serena, who has taken her place as the Irisu family's heir. Makina remembers how she barely knows Serena or their father before she has been kidnapped. She passes by Serena without being noticed. As Serena enters a car, it suddenly explodes, knocking Makina unconscious. Later, at the dorm, Sachi tells Yuji that Michiru and Yumiko have brought Makina to the room. Before Yumiko leaves, she tells Yuji that the real target of the attack is Serena, and advises him to check on her family. Yuji recalls when he has accepted Makina as his daughter, promising to protect her even if the world turns against her. Makina wakes up and asks about Serena, and Yuji tells her she survives but is in critical condition. He assures Makina that he will never leave her, making her cry with relief. After leaving, Yuji receives JB's message calling him to headquarters. When he arrives as number 9029, he sees that JB isn't alone. Her secretary, Kiara Farrell, is there. JB orders Kiara to bring coffee, making hers decaf. Kiara says she is a big fan of Yuji and wants a picture, but JB sends her away. Before leaving, Kiara winks and blows him a kiss. Yuji notices her big butt, and JB scolds him for sexual harassment, but he argues that using that term unfairly is an abuse of power. Finally, JB hands him a new mission. When he opens the envelope, he is shocked to see that his target is Makina. In a flashback, Makina's father, Masataka Irisu, is gunned down by a gang of thugs. Just before delivering the final shot, one of them reveals that his own wife has used and betrayed him. Makina wakes up from a nightmare about her father's death, cries for a while, then falls asleep again. Meanwhile, at headquarters, JB's boss is upset that Yuji has disobeyed a direct order. Kiara reports that they have located Yuji, codenamed 9029, and the boss orders the men to capture and interrogate him to find out where Makina is. Under a bridge, the men search for Yuji, but he suddenly appears and takes them down. In another flashback, Yuji is shocked when JB orders him to kill Makina, his own classmate. If he refuses, she threatens to arrest him, so he has no choice but to accept. After the flashback, Kiara struggles to get a signal from the men, while JB wonders how long Yuji can keep fighting. 20 hours earlier, Yuji and Makina are preparing to leave the dormitory for a while. Yuji warns the other girls, except Yumiko, that Makina is in danger, so they are going into hiding. Michiru gives Yuji 2,000 yen, Ammane gives Makina a lunchbox, and Sachi gives her a small sapling as a symbol of hope. As they leave, Yuji promises that no matter what happens, he won't let Makina die. Before leaving, they notice Yumiko standing on the rooftop, realizing they haven't said goodbye to her. Later, Yuji sees JB's car and asks why the Irisu family is so obsessed with Makina. JB explains that they fear her. After listening, Yuji makes it clear that he would rather protect Makina, even if it costs him his life. His determined eyes remind JB of Asako. Makina keeps thinking about the day her father died, remembering how she had spoken to his body until she could no longer talk. That night, Yuji returns to the apartment he has rented and sees Makina sleeping while crying. The next day, Makina brings Yuji 2 curry breads, 1 spicy and 1 sweet. Then they hear a loud noise from next door. Makina thinks the neighbor has called them fools, gets angry, and kicks the wall. Meanwhile, at HQ, JB and Kiara are monitoring Yuji's movements, and Kiara finds his hiding spot. That night, armed men arrive in Arashi cleaning vans, evacuate the apartment, and enter to find Yuji and Makina. The 2 hide inside a refrigerator. When the men find a lunchbox, a pesticide gas is released, but they put on gas masks and enter the room. JB realizes too late that the situation is a trap, and the heat from the gas causes the apartment to explode. The men manage to collect the evidence, but Yuji and Makina escape in a vehicle that headquarters can't track. After driving for a while, they get out, but Makina suddenly remembers that she has left her apple sapling behind. Yuji tells her there is no way to get it back. The next evening, Kiara informs JB that an apple sapling has been found at the apartment. JB then gets orders from a professor to return the sapling to where it belongs. Later, Yuji grabs a gun from one of the men and goes to another apartment, only to realize that Makina has gone back to find her sapling. When Makina finds the apple sapling, she quickly notices it is a trap. A man with a gun corners her, but when she calls out to Tuna Man, a fictional TV character, the man gets distracted. Taking the chance, Makina attacks him and chokes him with her arm, but as she gets up, another man shoots her, causing her to collapse. The man then kicks her repeatedly until Yuji arrives and fights them off. Makina is now on the verge of death, so Yuji carries her to a hospital. However, JB stops him at gunpoint, forcing him to surrender and hand over Makina. But instead of letting her die, JB takes her to the hospital the next day. Makina's mother, Kyoka Irisu, visits her but shows little concern. She is more focused on Serena, who needs an organ transplant. That night, Makina wakes up and sees an apple sapling beside her. Meanwhile, at the Irisu headquarters, Kyoka decides to let the police take control of the company. A delivery man arrives, and when Kyoka's assistant checks the package, he finds a note that reads, "Make a sound and you die." The delivery man then shoots the assistant for making noise. It is Yuji in disguise. He enters Kyoka's office, and when she sees her assistant's dead body, she turns to face Yuji. Without hesitation, he shoots and kills her before walking away. The next day, the news reports that an unidentified man has assassinated Kyoka, the president of Iris Global Company. Yuji realizes JB has helped him. When Makina is discharged from the hospital, Yuji comes to pick her up, making her happy. Kiara admires Yuji's actions. Together, Yuji and Makina return to school, reunited with the other girls, who are all happy except Michiru, who demands her money back. As JB drives Yuji back to school, she leans in and kisses him on the cheek just before he gets out, leaving him visibly uncomfortable. Sachi witnesses the moment and is surprised, but she quickly insists that she didn't see a thing. When Yuji tries to explain that it is a misunderstanding, Sachi jokingly calls it 2 adults playing around and then panics, asking if he will kiss her to keep her quiet. She even asks if she might get raped for saying that, pointing at him. Annoyed, Yuji tells her to go away, and she leaves. When Yuji returns to his room, Ammane is there ironing his clothes. She asks if he wants dinner, a shower, or her, but he quickly chooses a shower, disappointing her. While preparing dinner, she tells him she is so persistent because it is love at first sight for her. After Yuji finishes showering, Ammane serves dinner, but then she gets an email from Sachi. Suddenly, she gets a little mad and asks about the picture of JB kissing him, revealing that Sachi has taken it. Yuji explains that JB is just teasing him because she is his boss. Ammane then teases him back, asking if he wants her to be jealous, which makes him uncomfortable. She says she will forgive him if he kisses her. Yuji then stands up, grabs her, and kisses her on the lips. Ammane is shocked, saying it is her first kiss. Yuji tells her she can be his girlfriend, but under one condition. If he disappears or dies, she must not cry. She agrees, but then she asks if he likes her. Yuji answers yes, making Ammane so happy that she falls to her knees, giggling because she is now his girlfriend. When he tries to help her up, he hits her on the head for trembling. He then asks her something, and she repeats that it is love at first sight. Suddenly, she starts crying as she remembers someone, Kazuki Kazami, a girl from Class 1A at Takizono Private Academy, who is in the basketball club. Yuji is shocked to hear that name because Kazuki is his sister. Ammane then explains what happened 6 years ago, on August 14th. While returning home from a girls' basketball summer camp, their bus, which carries 14 students, including Kazuki, disappears. The event becomes known as the Takizono Academy minibus accident, and Ammane is the only survivor. Yuji is shocked shocked that Ammane has never told him that she is Kazuki's classmate. Feeling guilty, Ammane shows Yuji a journal from that day, and he begins reading it. 6 years ago, on August 14th, the girls' basketball training camp ends, and the advisor drives the minibus back to the academy with the students inside. Suddenly, a tire blows out, and the bus falls off a cliff, crashing into the forest. Ammane wakes up, realizing she has landed on someone, and quickly apologizes to the girl beneath her. Ammane introduces herself to Kazuki Kazami, who does the same in return. After apologizing, they both get out of the bus, and Kazuki gives Ammane her glasses back, revealing that Ammane wears glasses back then. Kazuki then says she will save the club president because she hates her, confusing Ammane. They help get everyone out of the minibus, revealing the victims. First-year students Tamaki Hiruka, Haruna Ibuki, Megumi Komori, and Ammane Suu. Second-year students Saaya Kaneda and Ritsu Koide. Third-year students Minori Sakuma, Mifuyu Sakurai, the vice president, and Chiaki Sakashida, the club president, and their advisor Yoshihiko Ochi. Kazuki asks Chiaki if they should treat the injured first, but Chiaki doesn't trust Kazuki's way of thinking. Instead, she tells Ritsu to help, even though Ritsu, despite coming from a family of doctors, doesn't know much about first aid. Kazuki wants to explore the area, but Chiaki doesn't let her go alone, so Ammane goes with her. They soon realize their phones have no signal. They are trapped in the forest, and climbing up is impossible. Meanwhile, Yoshihiko has a concussion, Hirouka has a fractured shin and knee, Mifuyu has a stomach wound from glass piercing her, and Saaya has a head injury. Kazuki brings a first aid kit and boils water, treating Saaya first, who thanks her. Kazuki then tells Ammane she is her first real friend, making her happy. Later, Kazuki treats the others, including Haruna's injured arm, but Tamaki is the most hurt and needs hospital care. Ammane notices Kazuki's left arm is broken and feels sorry, but Kazuki tells her not to worry. Ammane treats her arm. Then, Yoshihiko wakes up confused. Kazuki explains that the tire blows out, but they are lucky to survive. Chiaki decides they should wait for help, but Kazuki disagrees. When Ammane asks why she argues with Chiaki, Kazuki says she does it on purpose to stop Chiaki from objecting to her ideas. Back in the bus, Ammane sees that not everyone survives. The first to die is Tsukasa Shikanai. Yoshihiko buries Tsukasa and prays for her. Chiaki then tells the students to set up tents for the night. Kazuki looks forward to working with Ammane. That night, Ammane asks Kazuki what she is thinking, and Kazuki simply says she will read a book before going to sleep in a tent. Ammane sits awake, wondering what they will do next. This is only the first night of the accident, but it is just the beginning. On the second day of the accident, Ammane wakes up to find Kazuki missing. She then spots Minori tossing her cell phone into the air with a string, desperately trying to get a signal while sending an email, but there's still no reception. Ammane goes into the forest to look for Kazuki, marking X's on trees to avoid getting lost. She finds Kazuki, who has gathered some edible food. Ammane asks if there is a way home, and Kazuki says there is, but not yet. Ammane worries about Kazuki wandering alone, and Kazuki is surprised, apologizing, and promising not to leave her alone again. Meanwhile, the other girls still can't get a signal, even using a kite. When Ammane returns, she sees Kazuki stitching Mifuyu's stomach wound and is asked to change Tamaki's towel, which she does. Tamaki thanks Kazuki, but Kazuki tells her to thank Ammane instead, so she does. Later, Ammane and Kazuki go to fill water bottles, and Ammane suggests working together as a whole group, but Kazuki disagrees, saying working in pairs is better. Kazuki then asks why Ammane chooses her as a partner, and Ammane says it is because she likes her the most, making Kazuki blush. Ammane hugs Kazuki, but accidentally knocks her into the water, getting her wet. Just then, Kazuki hears a noise from above. Meanwhile, the other girls see a helicopter and shout for help. Ammane and Kazuki return, but the helicopter doesn't see them. Ammane then honks the minibus horn, hoping to get its attention, but the helicopter never returns, losing their only chance of rescue. That night, they all sleep. On the third day, 3 girls, including Tsukasa, have died and started to decay in the heat. While most of the girls are disgusted, Yoshihiko buries the bodies. Later, while picking flowers, Ammane asks Kazuki if she has a brother. Kazuki says she does and loves him very much, but they have problems with their parents. Ammane starts crying, wanting to go home, and Kazuki hugs and comforts her, promising to get her back. On the 4th day, the girls ration food, and Minori worries they will run out. On the 5th day, it rains, and they can do nothing. On the 6th day, Ritsu panics because they are 1 carrot short, but Kazuki cleverly cuts the carrots into pieces to make it seem like there is an extra 1, impressing Ritsu. On the 7th day, Ammane returns to the tent and sees Chiaki getting mad at Tamaki for refusing to let her feed her. Kazuki tells Chiaki off, making Chiaki leave the tent angrily. Kazuki then asks Ammane if she has picked up medicinal plants, and she has. After finishing Mifuyu's wound care, Kazuki tells her to go outside and get some sun. She then notices Tamaki and tries to unzip her sleeping bag to find out why she isn't eating, but Tamaki yells at her to stop. Kazuki understands it is embarrassing, but won't leave her like that, so she asks Ammane to boil water. Before leaving, Ammane realizes Tamaki has wet herself, which is why she is crying. Outside, Ammane wonders about Kazuki's behavior when Kazuki suddenly appears and sees a leech on Amane's leg. She sucks the blood out to stop the bleeding. On the 8th day, while exploring the forest, Kazuki overhears that Yoshihiko plans to leave the next day, believing he has found a way down the mountain. Kazuki tells Ammane not to worry because no matter what, she will protect her, then confesses her love, leaving Ammane speechless. On the 9th day, Yoshihiko leaves, taking half the food, hoping to find help. Chiaki yells at the girls for worrying about food shortages before going back to her tent. Kazuki agrees they need to find more food, so they all search. On the 10th day, it rains again, and Kazuki wakes up to see Ammane writing in her diary. Kazuki tells her to eat snails, but Ammane is tired of them. However, she eats them when Kazuki promises to prepare hot water and rice porridge after. Later, Kazuki sees maggots in Mifuyu's worsening wound. Meanwhile, Ammane is wiping Tamaki's body when Tamaki says she wants to die. Ammane wipes the mold off her skin, tells her not to scratch, and reassures her. On the 11th day, it keeps raining, and Haruna loses her mind, singing about the rain until Saya yells at her to stop. Saya tells Ammane that Megumi looks terrible because she is sharing food with her sick puppy, Alione. Everyone is getting weaker, eating insects, and drinking raw water. On the 12th day, the rain finally stops, but Alione dies. Kazuki suggests eating him, shocking the girls, especially Megumi. Chiaki agrees since they are starving. Ritsu is chosen to carve him but panics, so Kazuki smashes his head with a rock and butchers the meat herself. The girls eat while crying, especially Megumi. Ammane will never forget the day they eat real meat. On the 13th day of the accident, Megumi collapses after eating flower buds. Haruna becomes even more delirious due to a lack of vitamins. Mifuyu shows signs of blood poisoning, and Tamaki stops responding. As night falls, Ammane feels hopeless, but Kazuki tells her not to give up because it is too soon for her to die. On the 14th day, the girl's hunger reaches its limit. Kazuki reveals to Ammane that her brother's name is Yuji Kazami and promises to introduce them if they survive. Just then, Yoshihiko returns, laughing like a maniac, but Ammane realizes he has come back empty-handed and failed to find help. Later, Tamaki takes her last breath and dies, so Yoshihiko buries her. Ammane cries, regretting how cruel she had been. On the 15th day, Mifuyu dies from sepsis, and Megumi deletes herself. As Yoshihiko buries another body, Saya loses her mind and starts eating maggots from her wounds. Saaya and Minori argue over who should die first, but Chiaki tells them not to because Yoshihiko has caught a deer for food. Everyone eats except Kazuki, who warns Ammane that it might cause hepatitis. Ammane also avoids the meat, leaving her share for the others. That night, Kazuki wakes Ammane, and they see Chiaki and Yoshihiko sneaking into the forest. Kazuki decides they should escape and warns Ammane not to bring any demons with her. While hiding, Ammane sees Yoshihiko having sex with Chiaki, but then she notices a hand nearby. It is Megumi's. She realizes the meat isn't deer, it is Megumi's body. Terrified, she falls, making a noise. Yoshihiko and Chiaki hear them, and Chiaki orders Yoshihiko to kill them. The girls run as Yoshihiko chases them, but Kazuki hits him with a bag, knocking him down. As they run, they see Minori, whom Kazuki says is beyond saving, and soon, Saaya starts looking for them too. When Ammane trips and falls, she loses hope and tries to poke herself, but Kazuki stops her and decides to stay behind so Ammane can escape alone. Ammane doesn't like the idea of leaving Kazuki behind, but Kazuki insists. She gives Ammane food and a map with directions on how to escape the mountains. As Saaya and Ritsu get closer, Kazuki orders Ammane to run and never look back, leaving her no choice but to flee. Kazuki then removes the cast from her broken arm as Saaya and Ritsu catch her, holding her down, and it seems like they kill her. While running, Ammane regrets leaving Kazuki behind. 4 days later, Ammane wakes up, but she doesn't eat Kazuki's sweets. As she walks, she notices her hair falling out, but she keeps going. She then sees a vision of Kazuki and her classmates before collapsing. Just when she loses hope, she spots a car in the forest. Finally, she makes it out out and finds a cabbage field. She eats a cabbage and cries with relief, realizing she has survived. When she returns to the academy as the only survivor, people are disappointed she lived. That night, she has nightmares of her dead classmates and decides she needs punishment. The person she chooses to punish her is Yuji. After recalling her story, she apologizes to him for keeping it a secret and for sacrificing Kazuki. She says she only fills in for Kazuki out of duty, not love. Feeling guilty, she begs Yuji to kill her. Instead, he hits her lightly on the head and tells her to stop apologizing. Since Ammane truly loves him, he gives her a different punishment, to stay with him and live for his sake forever. Ammane accepts, hugging him while crying, and Yuji teases her for it. He then asks if Kazuki really dies, but Ammane isn't sure. She shows him the map Kazuki gave her and decides to visit the grave in the forest to face her fear. The next day, after buying flowers and incense, a man named Sakashita appears in front of Yuji, claiming to be Amane's fan. He says he was once an IT company board member but lost his purpose in life. After he leaves, Yuji and Ammane continue their journey to Kazuki's grave. As Yuji and Ammane walks through the forest, they follow a map leading to a grave. Stopping at a cluster of rocks marked with an X, Yuji digs up a container. When Ammane opens it, she discovers a knife and a note from Kazuki inside. The note says that everyone dies from illness caused by Tamaki's skin disease and a toxic soup they eat. It also mentions that Ammane survives because she doesn't eat the soup. Thanks to Tamaki, Kazuki's last request is for Ammane to take care of Yuji. A flashback shows Kazuki drawing the X marks. After reading, it is unclear whether Kazuki is alive or dead. When they reach the memorial stone, Ammane sees a sign showing they could have taken a 3-hour detour to the highway. She prays for the others, thanking them instead of asking for forgiveness. Yuji notices Chiaki Sakashita's name, making him think about a man named Sakashita he has met. As they are leaving, Ammane gets a call. She thinks it is Makina, but it is Keiji Sakashita, Chiaki's father. He has kidnapped her friends in a classroom and is threatening them with a shotgun. 1 hour earlier in the dormitory, Makina confuses Michiru with her talk about Tuna Man. Yumiko wants to leave but wears a hat to hide since she is supposed to be dead. Keiji then enters, asking for Amane's whereabouts. Makina tells him she is on a date with Yuji, but Keiji pulls out his shotgun and takes them hostage. In a flashback, Sachi secretly leaves her phone on for Yuji to hear, but Keiji notices Michiru holding hers. When she refuses to give it up, he shoots a glass window to scare her, so Sachi gives him the phone. On their way home, Yuji calls JB for help but doesn't want the police involved since they would discover Yumiko is alive. In the classroom, Yumiko asks Keiji why he is doing this, and he mentions losing his daughter, reminding her of her own father. When Keiji sees someone outside trying to break in, he fires his shotgun. Later, JB says breaking in is impossible, and Chizuru asks what is happening. When Yuji and Ammane arrive, Ammane sees armed men dressed as janitors, realizing Yuji's real job. JB warns that sniping Keiji in front of the girls would make him kill them. Yuji plans to lure Keiji out and snipe him from a lighthouse far from the school. JB thinks it is impossible, but Yuji insists. He asks for a 15-centimeter field of fire, reminding JB of a similar incident 4 years ago. She tells him he can only shoot Keiji if he uses the second urinal in the bathroom. Yuji then mentions using a marine hostage to manipulate Keiji. Later that day, in the classroom, Makina notices a distant light sending Morse code. The message tells her to lure Keiji to the boys' bathroom on the 3rd floor and break the right urinal. She pretends she needs to use the bathroom and demands Keiji take her. Michiru also says she needs to go, so Keiji takes them both. While he is gone, Sachi uses her phone to tell Yuji that no one is injured. Yuji is already in position at a lighthouse, ready to fire. Inside the bathroom, Michiru doesn't want to enter the boys' restroom, but Keiji forces them in. When Makina hesitates to break the urinal, Keiji hits her, causing Michiru to accidentally smash it with her head and pass out. Yuji informs JB through a walkie-talkie that Makina has completed her mission. Keiji then calls Ammane, ordering her to come inside the school, firing his shotgun at the ceiling as a warning. Yuji tells Ammane to bring Keiji water and make him drink it before she enters. Inside, as everyone sweats and Michiru wets herself, Keiji forces Ammane to change clothes, ties her up, and drinks several bottles of water. He blames her for sacrificing his daughter Chiaki and her classmates. He gives her 2 choices, her own life or for her friends' lives. Ammane chooses to sacrifice herself, but instead of shooting her, Keiji hits her with his shotgun and begins abusing her. Yuji notices Sachi's phone battery dies, but instead of attacking, he decides to wait. Keiji then takes Ammane to the bathroom for his own pleasure, but as he starts to pee, Yuji sees him enter the firing range. He fires and hits Keiji's shoulder. Realizing he is shot, Keiji collapses in pain, allowing Ammane to grab his shotgun. Yuji confirms the hit, and JB orders her men to move in. Ammane frees her friends, and Michiru, now awake, realizes she wet herself. The men arrest Keiji, and Yuji wonders if he is getting closer to Asako. Back in the classroom, Ammane apologizes, but her friends reassure her. Yuji returns, and they are all happy to see him. A year later, near Yonaguni Island, police chase two men on a speedboat. One man fires a rocket at the ship and helicopter while the other opens a music box and eats chocolate.
An aura-filled ending. They really got us waiting for more story to unravel. With that, the first season of this story comes to an end. Folks, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell icon to stay updated. See you guys in the next one.